Kamala's in-home firearm inspections, violent migrant gangs in New York City, and our special guest, petertilem. I'm Dan Was. This is The Loaded Mic. "14-year-old Colt Gray killed 4 people in a rampage at the Appalachian High School just outside of Atlanta, Georgia." Now, Colin Gray, the 54-year-old father of Colt, is charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children for buying the firearm that was allegedly used in the school killing. There's been severe failure or purposeful avoidance to discuss the true causes of this crime and an unhealthy, obsessive focus on the gun. In this case, dishonest media outlets have people enraged at the father for purchasing the gun, but avoid discussing the fact that the father didn't participate in the act of violence. The media also refuses to address the mental instability of the child, a problem that we see much more frequently in recent times. They don't seem to care about the mental deterioration of our children, but really want American gun owners disarmed. It's become obvious that the political left and its media sources are covering this story in such a way that would set the table to push for more gun legislation. Such legislation might include mandatory national in-home lockup of firearms with inspections, or other laws that would make firearm possession impossible for parents of children under a certain age. Now, don't forget, Kamala Harris said she'll send government into your home to check your firearms.
Responsible behaviors among everybody in the community, and just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Have you heard from...
What better way to garner support for such communist activity than a few more of these cases ending in conviction of the parents? I don't know what the answer for Colin Gray's actions is, and I'm not defending him. His behavior may have been completely irresponsible, but holding him accountable with up to 180 years behind bars would be a concern for all parents moving forward. It seems precedence for this type of punishment has already been created when James and Jennifer Crumbly were convicted after their child committed murder with a firearm. Could this be a tactic for the political left to scare parents out of gun ownership or pave the way for normalizing the violation of our Fourth Amendment rights? If a parent can be held responsible for a child's actions to such a degree, would it not lead to parents being responsible for lesser crimes or even non-crimes? By such a standard, wouldn't it be possible that eventually parents would be held accountable for their child physically harming another in a schoolyard fight if, for instance, that parent had either trained or paid for their child's karate training? If a standard is set in the courts where a parent is responsible for the actions of the child, shouldn't parents of gang members also be held accountable when their children commit murder? The average age of a gang member is 15 years old, yet those parents are never held accountable. Holding them accountable doesn't move the needle on gun control. For more Second Amendment content, please check out my Good Gun, Bad Guy book series at goodgunbadguy.com. Before we bring John in, let me mention one of our sponsors. This device, KaliKey, removes your AR from the definition of assault weapon. Did you know that when so-called assault weapon ban lists are created, they exclude manually operated bolt-action firearms? Just by dropping this KaliKey into your direct impingement AR, in place of your semi-automatic BCG, you'll have a bolt-action rifle that falls outside the definition of assault weapon. You don't need to do anything else. Give the KaliKey a look, because with it, you could retain all your rifle's features, avoid registration complications, revive your black rifle sales as an FFL, regain the ability to do private party transfers, legally transport across hostile jurisdictions, hunt with your AR in areas like Pennsylvania, enhance long-range precision and quiet or suppressed shooting. KaliKey has state-specific expert attorney opinions on its website and supports grassroots Second Amendment organizations with its sales. KaliKey's mission is to empower customers and claw back our civil liberties. So go to calikey.com, use the discount code LOADED. Now, we're going to talk about this topic of parents being held accountable and what that may lead to with, he's so smart, he has more degrees than global warming, Johnchiara.
Hello, fans. Hi, Dan.
Hi, what's going on?
We have a sunshiny day here in upstate New York, and here we are.
And we're for the first time, we're live on TikTok,
Right.
Which is a big thing for us. We're going to do the first half of the show here on TikTok. So if you're watching, welcome. But John, there's this serious thing going on. You know, this guy, this 54-year-old father,
Right.
is being charged with all sorts of. He could go to jail for 180 years. So those are my initial thoughts. Like, what kind of precedent are we setting here? Would this lead to just parents getting in trouble if their kid beats up another kid in the school playground? You know, stuff like that. What are your thoughts after hearing that monologue?
Well, obviously somebody wants to hold somebody responsible. The kids had mental issues for years, right? That's what I've been seeing.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And why aren't we dealing with that?
That's what I would say. I mean, it's interesting how after these events, you find out all these things that have happened before and nobody ever did anything about them. You know, what happened to red flag laws? Can we call the cops on the kid next door who's acting like a crazy person? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to be preemptive about that kind of stuff because you don't know what somebody might do.
Well, that's the
down
thing.
The line.
And that's why I'm against red flag laws,
Right,
because they're
exactly.
used all the time in bad faith.
You're assuming intent, which is something that happens all the time and is never correct.
If the kid has never done anything wrong, then I suppose there's no reason that he should be in trouble. But if he's showing signs of being crazy, then the right thing for parents to do would be have him seek some psychological help and try to get his stuff figured out. Because, I mean, we all go through psychological issues. That's part of being human. Let's figure it out and let's work on those issues is my point. Rather than, creating precedents with this father, throwing him in jail, and then saying, well, now we're going to have to come into your home. And if you're a gun owner and you have children under 18, we're going to come into your home and we're going to have mandatory inspections of your firearms and the way they're locked up or whatever. But can you see it happening? No. Kamala Harris just said she would do that. That's
the plan, right? Okay, there we go.
Every time one of these stories comes out, whether it's a Vegas killing, whether it's Parkland, whether it's one of these school killings, there's always an agenda attached to it. Yep. And with this one here, it scares me because it looks like our Democrats would love to attach some sort of unconstitutional legislation.
And just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible.
They want to blame the parents. But in every other part of their agenda, they're trying to take power away from the parents.
Exactly.
And give it to the state. Yeah. So which is it? That's pretty confusing.
Yeah, in other words, hide your kids' mental instability when the teacher's in the classroom convincing him that he's a girl.
Big time.
Hide that from the parents. They shouldn't be responsible there, but yet hold them responsible when it comes to a firearm-related issue.
This stuff needs to be laid out on a table, and some kind of rules have to be put in place that are common sense and don't infringe on individual liberty, which all these things do. They're always trying to find ways to make somebody responsible for something that they really don't have any way to be responsible for. And yet they want the state to take over and educate the children, but nobody's holding the state responsible for any of this. It's upside down and backwards, like everything else.
Well, it all leads to over influence by the government or giving more power. It always leads to more power to the government. Government keeps getting bigger and bigger, and our power under the Constitution and Bill of Rights keeps getting squashed and keeps getting smaller, or at least appears to be smaller.
Well, it appears to be, especially since a lot of this stuff is going against the First and Second Amendment.
Yeah.
The first two amendments, they're just running roughshod over them in many ways and saying, no, that doesn't matter. Things are different than they used to be, so we have to deal with these things differently. I hear that argument so much in so many areas of politics, society, religion, everything else. Everything's different than it used to be. Well, the things on the outside are different, but we're not different on the inside.
Right.
We're just being triggered by different stimuli. So we can still deal with ourselves the way we deal with ourselves, and we don't need the government knocking on your door and forcing their way into your house.
Yeah. Exactly. But that's what they want to do. And as soon as government seems to get more power, they're talking about a lot of global stuff too, a lot of global government stuff right now. They just, I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't have all the details, but they're passing new policies at the global level. And they're trying to, with the idea of this one world government, which really scares me. It's
We're trying to hold people accountable for what they say in this country and hold them responsible in other countries, right?
Completely different cultures, right? Totally different geographic cultures, everything.
What does Tim Walsh say? Mind your own business.
Well, I just, it would be such a disaster and basically our Constitution and Bill of Rights would be just senseless. It would look silly.
Right.
It would make those documents look silly.
Right.
With a one world type overseeing government entity, of course, who aren't elected. Because I don't remember voting for any of these people
Aren't
involved.
elected and don't have our best interest at heart, obviously.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about us. We're the bad guys. We're the evil.
Yeah, and it's just we need some common sense back in government, especially at the presidential level, and because that stuff, that idea, these Democrat ideas, these liberal ideas, really affect us at the local level, especially when you get down to the state governors and the big city mayors.
We see that here. New
Well,
York State.
Let me talk about that while we're on the topic. New York City sanctuary status allows bloodthirsty migrant gangs into the Big Apple's shelters. So this is an article by New York Post. The Big Apple's migrant-friendly sanctuary city status has allowed the vicious Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua to flourish in local migrant shelters, hamstringing cops and keeping immigration agents in the dark, law enforcement sources tell the Post. So the gang has infiltrated the shelter system in New York City to build a criminal enterprise that peddles drugs, guns, and women in the 5 boroughs. The 5 boroughs are Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx. The restrictive policy largely bars New York Police Department from policing the facilities and prohibits the city from tipping off federal immigration. Can you believe this insanity? Federal immigration agents about dangerous illegal immigrants, the sources says. There's a quote here. It says, "It was an unintended consequence of this administration's policies," a source with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, in New York told the Post. However, the New York City Council and the mayor's office exacerbated the issue with policies that ignore federal law. How could this possibly help anybody?
It's the same kind of stuff that we've watched Kathy Hochul do too, right? Just ignore stuff at the federal level and do whatever you want to do. Screw the citizens. Doesn't matter. It's bizarre, right?
It seems bizarre. And I always try to find the common sense thread to it all, right? Like, why do they do it? Like, what's the motivation? Because it seems stupid. It seems insane that these governors and mayors would do this stuff. So there must be an incentive for them. What do you think?
That's a good question. What could it be? Soros?
It's got to be money.
It's got to be money, right?
Well, look at
promises of power or whatever.
Well, look, yeah, exactly. I always look at it like, I bet you these people are being promised generational wealth. So, in other words, their grandkids or great-grandkids will be financially set up forever if they do these things and ruin their state. So they get in there, they get the opportunity to do good things, to be the mayor, be the governor, and they're corrupted right from the start for their own personal gain. It's just so heinous. And the thing that frustrates the hell out of me is that there are people who continue to vote for them.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's really weird, though, that you would think that in this day and age that people are getting into public office, and that's what the plan is, right? The plan is to subvert everything for personal gain. I mean, is that the evil that we're all afraid of happening? You know, our leadership being corrupted and taken over by outside forces that don't have our best interest at heart? I mean, that's why the red flag should go up. This is why so many arguments I hear, well, things like election integrity and stuff. I'm like, you can look at all these things that happened in 2020 and have no questions about anything. Like nothing possibly could have went wrong. And now in some states, they're insisting on paper ballots, and people are all up in arms about it and stuff. Well, because I can verify the paper. There it is. I can look at it. You can look at it. Right. We can agree that it says this. Put it in that pile, as opposed to who knows.
What's the problem you have with paper ballots?
I don't have any problem with paper ballots.
I mean, the ones who are
because it's harder to cheat. That's why.
Well, I know.
That's what it looks like, though. This is the problem: is all these things that we look at and comment on, all are set up to look like scams. So is that just ineptitude or incompetence or what? But
no, it can't be. These people are not that stupid. I mean, as much as we'd like to think they are, they're not. They're obviously not. They're doing this stuff and they're benefiting from it. The election interference and all that stuff that happened in 2020.
They get away with it too because they have so many minions that are just brainwashed, I guess, to the point where they'll accept anything.
And if the media would do its damn job,
right,
and talk about this stuff,
terrible.
Just that's your freaking job, media. Do your job. Talk about what's really happening instead of this covering up for the Democrats. You're killing our country. They're killing our country.
I agree.
And the stupid people who keep voting for these Democrats are getting more and more brainwashed into believing that the Democrats are good and they're doing good things and that the media is being honest. It's getting so bad right now that you got people who actually believe that Trump is a convicted felon and a rapist and all this stuff. They truly believe it. It's not that they're pretending anymore. They've heard it so many times. I forget what the psychological process is, but it's a Marxist process where if you keep repeating the same lie over and over and over, it will become a truth and reality to that person. They know what they're doing.
They have to. And they're getting away with it right in front. And it's not even covered up anymore, right? I mean, some of the stuff you watch, you watch some interviews on TV. What was it, Anderson Cooper the other night talking to somebody, and he's just like leading them down the path to like, yeah, this is good. No, wait a minute. You're a journalist. You're supposed to ask questions about this stuff. You're not supposed to present an agenda based on conclusions that are based on assuming intent. There's so many layers of crap that's piled up in all these attitudes that are accepted as, like you said, they're givens at this point, right? Oh, Trump is Hitler. Trump is evil. That's a given to half the country. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what did he do? Especially with him, he was president for 4 years. So it's not like he's an unknown quantity. We can check what he did. He didn't do any of the things that they're afraid about for 4 years. Now, all of a sudden, he's going to do all these horrible things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's illogical.
Exactly. I want to get you one of our sponsors real quick. LifeWave is a transdermal patch that allows your body to produce its own natural pharmacy through light energy. Now, the X30 patch tells your body to emit heat in the form of light, which reflects back into your body, elevating a certain copper peptide, GHK-Cu. This peptide activates your stem cells, which are the only type that can move throughout your body to heal inflammation. LifeWave offers an affordable membership and has a history of wellness that spans 20 years. It's been around since 2004 to help organizations like SEAL Team 6 and the Olympic swim team stay awake and alert. Today, these non-addictive patches are used by thousands of athletes and military professionals. LifeWave is available in over 80 countries, giving millions the opportunity of maximum wellness. For more information, testimonials, patents, and studies, go to justpatch.biz. All right. So it's just like, I don't know. I'm not sure what at this point we can do with respect to the brainwashing, because once the media, like you said, well, the thing you said that was interesting, that really became, it's apparent now, is that the media doesn't hide it anymore. Nobody's hiding it. It's all out in the open. And I think once they reached a certain pendulum, they realized that they don't have to hide it anymore. They've got the leverage behind them. They've got the media leverage. They've got the voters. They've got the whole package. They've got Hollywood. They've got movies and TV, television commercials. They got the marketing companies who produce the commercials. They've got the whole system. Schools.
Taylor Swift. You got
Taylor
Oprah.
Swift. The schools, the colleges. They've got the whole system behind them now. Now they don't have to hide their deviant policies. They can now bring them out in the open and present them as normal.
Yeah.
That's scary.
I think part of that problem is that for generations, Republicans have just been lax at calling these things out and saying, hold on, you know, we got to examine this and figure out if this is good for us going forward or not, because obviously that wasn't done. So now they're at the point where everybody believes everything. Like you say, it's reached a tipping point where they don't even care anymore. You know, I mean, Kamala Harris in the debate. Oh, the fine people hoax. What?
Yeah.
Everybody knows that's fake for 3.5 years, and you bring it up in a presidential debate in front of millions of people on network TV. I mean, talk about gall.
Because and I think when they do that, they're speaking to that portion of people in our society who are already convinced and brainwashed.
And they're throwing it in the rest of our faces, saying, "See, it doesn't matter what
it doesn't
I say.
matter.
They
Exactly.
believe anything I say. I'm the one.
Yeah.
Joy, joy, joy.
Yeah. Yeah, they're exactly. They're throwing it in our faces, laughing at us, saying, it doesn't matter what you think. We've got the narrative now. We've gained a grasp on the narrative. We control the narrative. We control the minds of almost half the population. We can manipulate them like puppets now at this point because they've been so indoctrinated for so long.
Yep.
And they're laughing at Republicans saying, screw you. We don't care anymore what you think. We're going to do what we want. That's a real point in our society. That was the tipping point. They made it over that hump. Now we got, as far as the narrative goes, we're fighting desperately.
Well, did you hear, what's his name, the guy in Pennsylvania that just announced today that they turned some county in Pennsylvania red from blue?
Oh,
the guy
yes.
that was out getting all the voter registrations and stuff. Now there's more Republicans registered in that county.
Scott, what's his name?
I don't know. Scott Adams talks about it a lot. But yeah.
Scott Presley. A good kid. He looks like he's really doing a lot of hard work.
Doing something.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'm saying, you know. And I talk to people locally here, you know, like, what can we do? Let's go out and, you know, we need to knock on doors. We need to do whatever we need to do. First of all, we got to make sure that Republicans go out and vote. Yeah. They can't sit on their butts and think that everything's going to be all right. Oh, I'm in New York State. It doesn't count. You still got to vote. The numbers need to be there so that people can see what's happening and what people care about. Yeah, and watch the trends as we turn more counties in red. Watch the trends, because the more we do that, like let's say we don't turn New York State, red. New York State doesn't vote for Trump. But if we start to see the numbers go up with Trump voters or Republican voters the numbers going up in New York State, well, that's going to put more leverage on the Democrats who run the state, and it's going to start to encourage bringing in more Republicans in the legislature. And hopefully, yeah, I would think. So those things matter. So even if you're in New York State or California or Illinois or whatever your blue state is, you got to vote. Well, the local races count. The state races all count. Yeah. Your Congress and senators, those races all count. So you can't not participate and then complain about stuff. Right. Right. Well, TikTok, we're going to leave you. But we'll be back on our other networks with Peter Tilem, our special guest.
And thank you so much for watching. I'm Dan Was, and the Second Amendment is not a privilege, it's your right.
The Cali Key removes your AR from the definition of an assault weapon. It lets you keep your rifle with all its features, avoid registration hassles, and transport in hostile jurisdictions. The Cali Key also lets you hunt in jurisdictions like Pennsylvania and enhances long-range precision shooting. Cali Key's expert legal opinions empower informed decisions, and sales help grassroots Second Amendment organizations. Cali Key is your tool to keep and equip your AR, empower yourself, and defend your civil rights.
Our founding fathers saw them coming over 200 years away. That's why they wrote the Second Amendment. Join us in the fight to preserve your gun rights and stop unconstitutional gun control. Gun Owners of America is the country's only no-compromise gun rights organization. Not only do we inform and educate, but we bring the fight to court and win. Your God-given right to keep and bear arms is our top priority. Become a member today and help us take back America. Join us at gunowners.org. It doesn't matter where you live in the United States. If you're a gun owner, you keep your eyes on states like California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York. And you do that because where the blue states are and the unconstitutional gun laws, you get to see what they really want to do with respect to your Second Amendment. So today, we're going to talk about New York State with our special guest, attorney and founder of New York TAC Defense, petertilem.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So Peter, thanks for coming on the show. There's so much to talk about with respect to New York gun law. I wanted to start off with tell us a little bit about yourself, so people know who you are and how you got to where you are. So you're kind of your quick bio.
Okay, well, I was this very unique, almost unicorn in that I grew up in Brooklyn, and when I turned 21, I applied for a New York City gun license. I got a target license at that point, and I went to law school soon thereafter, and immediately joined the district attorney's office in Manhattan. And I was one of the few gun owners, maybe the only gun owner in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office at that time. So I kind of came to the District Attorney's Office with that hobby and that enjoyment. And so when I started being able to specialize, I spent a lot of time working on gun cases. And I realized that we were getting them wrong, that the police didn't know what the gun laws were, that the judges didn't know what the gun laws were, and that the prosecutors didn't know what the gun laws were. So I got very involved in New York gun laws and New York gun cases at the district attorney's office. I joined a group called the FIREARMS Trafficking Unit. I was in this unit where we would investigate how guns were illegally flowing into New York and the interaction between people bringing drugs down south from New York and then buying guns with that money and turning around and shipping those guns back to New York. So I worked on that. I did a lot of gun cases over the years as a prosecutor. And after 10 years, I decided to start my own firm. So the natural progression was to start representing gun owners. And I've been doing this for over 33 years.
Well, we certainly appreciate it, especially here in New York. And before we get into New York TAC Defense, which I definitely want you to tell people about, I'm happy now to have you, I guess, on retainer, as you call it, right?
That's correct.
So, and because carrying a gun in New York is it's a special thing, because we have to be careful. Really, is what we. But what I want to do before we get into New York TAC Defense, I really would like you to help us understand New York gun laws in kind of a historical context, where we start before Bruin and the laws that triggered the Bruin, New York State Rifle and Pistol, and then what happened as a result of Bruin, and then what happened when Kathy Hochul brought in CCIA, and where we are now. Can you kind of give us bullet points in that order?
Absolutely. So New York was a very, very difficult place to get a gun, especially a license to carry a gun. It's still difficult to get a license to carry a gun. It's still difficult to get a license to have a gun. New York State is one of the few states where you can't touch a gun. You can't go to a gun store and handle a gun. You can't go to the gun range and shoot your friend's gun. You can't own a gun in your home without a license issued by New York State. And it's a felony if you touch a gun in New York State without having a New York State issued license. So, but they did issue licenses, and they were really for people who had connections or had money. One of the criteria was if you transported a lot of cash. So
So it was May issue, right? It was May issue.
It was May issue, and the issue was whether there was something about your situation distinguished you in your need for self-protection from the rest of the society. And as the Supreme Court pointed out, that's actually the very definition of something that's not a right. That's specifically, they're talking about something that's a special privilege.
Right.
But New York State required that you showed proper cause, that you showed a valid reason why you were different than the rest of society. And there's a presumption that people in New York cannot carry guns. But what about you is different? And you had to show that to get a gun license.
Yeah.
And for those few of us that had gun licenses at the time, there were very few restrictions because the government understood these were people that were politically connected or had financial means, and they didn't want to give those people a hard time. So there were very few restrictions about where you can carry, when you can carry, how you can carry. And then all of a sudden, the Supreme Court said to New York, proper cause is unconstitutional. You have to issue gun licenses to pretty much everyone.
And that was Bruin, right?
New York's reaction was, if you're telling us that we have to issue gun licenses to everyone, we're going to make it such that there is no place for them to be able to carry. And we're going to make it so dangerous for them to carry a gun and so difficult that they're just going to leave it home. And so they passed a law that they called, and you got to love the names, the Concealed Carry Improvement Act.
Yes, exactly.
Because there was something wrong with concealed carry and it needed to be improved.
Right. Improved to their standards.
Improved to their standards. So one of the things they said was, okay, you can't carry it in any kind of medical facility, hospital, doctor's office, optometrist office.
Was it places
you
of
can't
worship?
carry it in any government building. You can't carry it in any church or synagogue. You can't carry it in any theater or entertainment venue or casino.
In other words, anywhere you would go.
Well, anywhere you would go, and not only that, but anywhere you would go that you said, you know what, this is a place where I should probably have a gun.
Yeah.
Those were the places that they said, okay, you're not carrying there. No transportation hubs, no subways, no buses, no trains, no zoos, no parks, on and on and on. And not only that, but we don't want you to leave it in your car. We won't want you to leave it in. We want you to leave it in your house when you leave in the morning. So we're going to make special rules that you can't leave it in your car. You have to, if you want to leave it in your car, you have to have it in a lockbox, a fireproof safe. It's got to be attached to the vehicle. And so it was just all these laws that were specially designed to make sure that when you left the house in the morning, you looked at your day and you said, there's no place I can carry it. And I don't want to bother, and I don't want to get myself in trouble. Yeah. And by the way, it was a felony, even though you already had been issued a license, even though you had gone through a 6-month process, and it's anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half, even though you've paid the exorbitant fees, if you carry in one of those places, it's a felony. And so all of that stuff was immediately litigated, and judges in both the Northern District of New York and the Western District of New York struck down many of the provisions of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act.
Can you tell us what the provisions were? I know one of them was social media requirements, and one.
Well, that was the other aspect of it.
Okay.
What they did was, the other aspect of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act was not only did they make it so that you couldn't carry the gun, but they also made it much more difficult to apply for a license. They got rid of the proper cause, like the Supreme Court told them to, but they said, okay, now you're going to need 4 references. You're going to need to disclose your social media accounts.
Household members?
For the licensing officer, you need permission from your household members. You need 4 reference letters. And it was really just an attempt to do everything that they can to make it as difficult as possible to get a gun. And in addition to all that, they made you take an 18-hour class. Now, they didn't come up with a curriculum for the 18-hour class. They came up with a number. And I assume that number was based upon, well, what's the most we could possibly do to make it as difficult as possible for people without the Supreme Court striking us down again. And so in addition to all the other paperwork requirements, before you can get a concealed carry license in New York, you have to do an 18-hour concealed carry class. Now, what happened was after these judges struck down many of the provisions of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, the government, the state, Governor Hochul appealed to the Second Circuit, the appellate court. And what the appellate court did was they issued a stay of these judges' decisions and didn't allow most of them didn't allow the injunctions imposed by these judges to take effect, meaning that the law could still be enforced. Another major provision, which is now out, but a major provision of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, was you could not carry on private property. You couldn't carry in a store, a bank, any place that was private property unless there was a sign that indicated that people could carry at that location.
Yeah. So can I interrupt you there for a second, Peter?
Sure.
To me, that sounds like Kathy Hochul said she declared all businesses gun-free zones and required the businesses to post a sign saying they're not. And how many businesses are actually going to post that sign? It used to be the
Correct.
other way around, right? It used to be all private businesses, if they didn't want guns on their premises, they would have to post a sign. She reversed it to basically, essentially, say all private businesses are gun-free zones, correct?
That's what she did. Now, that's since been overturned and is no longer the law in New York State.
So the law has been rewritten now? Because this is
Not
what...
that it's been rewritten. The law is still on the books, but both the federal district judges and the Court of Appeals have agreed that that is likely unconstitutional and cannot be enforced pending litigation on whether the law is constitutional or not.
So here's my question, and I'm going to make notes here. What portions of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act are non-enforceable now? Well, in other words, which ones do we have to ignore?
Okay, so right now the biggest one is what they call restricted locations, which are the private property, stores open to the public, restaurants, etc. Those provisions that require the stores to post a sign before you can carry, that's been ruled unconstitutional and is not being enforced in New York State anymore. The federal courts are not allowing them to enforce it.
Okay.
Other locations where you can carry a gun now because of judicial action. And I hate giving out these locations because I want to caution that this can change later on today. We're waiting for a potential decision from the Second Circuit. The Second Circuit was just overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court on this issue, and we don't know if any day they're going to modify their injunction.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, you can carry a gun in a restaurant that also has a bar in it. You can carry in the restaurant portion of a bar that of a restaurant that has a bar. You can carry in banquet halls. You can carry in parks, and you can carry. The houses of worship has been modified to now make it so that you can carry if you have permission from the head of the congregation. For example, if he designates you or she designates you as a person responsible for security, you can carry there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's still litigation going on about many other locations.
Okay. Okay. What about the social media? That's been
Social media has been stayed. It's been ruled unconstitutional.
Okay.
And although it's still on many applications, you don't have to fill that out. You can just write on there that it's stayed by the action of the circuit court.
anything else that you can think of that we don't have to be concerned with? Because there was a whole list of stuff in there in that CCIA.
Whole list of stuff. Look, it's literally changing every day.
Okay.
And so, the best thing to do is if you're going to a place where certainly if it's on the list of the CCIA locations that you can't carry, you just need to get updated information before you carry in one of those locations.
Okay. So it's still somewhat of a gray area, and
It's
New York gun
It's
owners
not
are
only a gray area, but it's changing all the time. And it's not changing in a way that, okay, I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble. It's a felony. So, New York is really accomplishing their goal, which is to make it so difficult and so confusing and so scary for New York gun owners that people just leave their guns at home.
Yeah. Let me get to, we got so much more to talk about. Let me get to one of our sponsors real quick here, Peter. You want to know who's fighting for your gun rights? Gun Owners of America. Now, GOA is the no compromise gun rights group, and I urge everyone to become a member at gunowners.org. Well, what have they done? Well, GOA secured a preliminary injunction against the ATF pistol brace rule. GOA members submitted a record 85,000 plus comments opposing the ATF's universal registration check rule. They helped enact permitless carry in Nebraska and Florida. GOA secured victories in California, Illinois, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. Plus, they won 2 legal victories against the ATF's zero-tolerance policy. And GOA fought to overturn Joe Biden's ban on funding hunter education, shooting sports, and archery in schools. So with the constant attacks on our Second Amendment, we often ask ourselves, well, what can I do about it? Well, this is what you can do. You can become a member at gunowners.org and help us save the Second Amendment. Well, Peter, thank you. That was a lot of good information about New York. And is there anything else about the gun laws that you think New York gun owners should know right now?
Well, one thing is that, and this is major news. My firm is suing New York City. We are suing New York City. We have 2 major claims in our lawsuit. We brought a class action against them. One is that people are waiting too long to get their gun licenses. Often people are waiting 1.5 years to get a gun license. And the other one is we contend that New York is obligated under the Second Amendment and the full faith and credit clause of the U.S. Constitution to accept the gun licenses of every other state. Right now, New York City doesn't accept the gun licenses of anywhere. They don't even accept the gun licenses of Westchester County, which is in New York State, right on the border of New York City. You need a special New York City carry license in order to be able to carry a gun in New York. And we are in federal court basically trying to get those laws overturned. Now, we have won a major victory, which is now for the first time in history, New York City is now accepting gun licenses from people who don't live in New York City and who don't live in New York State and have no other ties to the state. So if you're a tourist and you want to travel to New York City, you can now apply for the first time for a New York City concealed carry license.
Now, Peter, you mentioned Westchester County in New York State, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just got this alert yesterday that the County of Westchester Board of Legislators has scheduled a public hearing and vote on the proposed increase in pistol license fees on September 30th, 2024. They're talking about raising the application for or renewal of a pistol license or semi-auto rifle from $10 to $175. They also want to talk about to amend the restriction of a license from $3 to $125 and all other amendments from $3 to $25. Is this accurate? Is this what they're trying to do, or are you not familiar with this?
No, I'm familiar with it. And yes, they're trying to do it. And now, some of these things, people may not understand what we're talking about, because if you don't live in New York State, you're going to say, what does it mean to remove restrictions on a license? Well, up until Bruin, everyone's gun license came with restrictions, right? You weren't just allowed to carry any place. Maybe you can carry in conjunction with your business, or maybe you can carry only as a sportsman while you're hunting. And now the Supreme Court said they have to remove these restrictions.
Yeah.
But if you want to apply for your constitutional right, they want to charge you $175. Do you know that when you want to buy a gun in New York, you have to amend your gun license and add that gun? Every gun is listed with
Yeah.
its serial number on the back of your gun license.
Yeah.
So that's an amendment. $25 every time you want to buy a gun. That's on top of the NICS fee, and that's on top of paying for the gun, and that's on top of the sales tax. They're going to charge you $25 to amend your license.
Wow. Yeah, that's I wasn't exactly sure. Thanks for explaining that. Yeah, people don't understand it. They just don't understand what we deal with in New York State. But we can move. We can always move. But some of us would choose to stay here and fight. That's
And
my
people
problem.
are moving.
People are moving. Yes, that's true. Okay, so Peter, I wanted to get into New York TAC defense. What you've done here is something unique and specially tailored for New York State. We appreciate it very much. Trust me. And but could you explain to us what New York TAC defense actually is? Because it's not an insurance, but it's something else. Can you explain it?
Sure. So I believe it's 49 states or so that have some form of concealed carry insurance. It may be 48 states. I'm not sure about the state of Washington, but 48, 49 states have some form of concealed carry insurance. New York used to have concealed carry insurance. All the concealed carry insurance companies used to do business here. And then about 10 years ago, our anti-gun governor, Governor Cuomo, turned the insurance department loose on these companies and threw them all out of New York. And as Second Amendment attorneys, I was really angered by that. And especially because here we're the enemy and they want us to be vulnerable. They don't want us to have the protection of concealed carry insurance or a law firm behind us. So I had this concept that we could reinvent this as a prepaid legal plan for gun owners that was very similar, but not identical, but very similar to the concealed carry insurance that used to be available in New York. Problem is, I'm a busy attorney, and when am I going to have time to develop such a program? And this was really a new category that I was building from scratch. And so I had the idea in my mind for some time, and then all of a sudden in 2020, the court shut down, and I spent March, April, and May of 2020 developing New York TAC defense. And so we went live June 1st of 2020. It's an extremely popular program for New York gun owners. As you can hear, if you're a gun owner in New York, you're the enemy. If you're a member of New York TAC defense, which is just a prepaid legal plan for gun owners, then not only do you get up to $250,000 of criminal defense representation in the event that you're involved in a self-defense incident with any lawful weapon, but you also have the full backing of my law firm as you go through your life as a concealed carry holder. You can ask us Second Amendment questions. We're here to answer our clients' questions. We will represent people in the event that there's a civil suit filed by the person that they're involved in the self-defense incident with. And it's very similar to the insurance that New York has lost, but are no longer available. The price point is very similar. We have plans starting at $32 a month. And so it's an extremely popular program for New York gun owners.
Yeah, as soon as I heard you on our friend Anthony Calandro's show, I bought in. I think it's a great thing. You know, it's just knowing that I have you in my back pocket should something go wrong. It's just I feel better about it knowing that I have all that available, those available attorney fees covered for me should something occur. It just makes sense for me, and I think especially like you said in New York State, gun owners are the enemy to the government. The government is out to get us. It's pretty clear, and just knowing that we have attorneys on our side, it's a good thing. But it's not an insurance, correct? Could you explain the difference between having an insurance like, say, I don't know, what are some of the insurances? The Carry Guard, I think. Some of the other ones. Can you explain the difference?
USTCA, CCW Safe, these types of programs. So in those cases, you're really buying an insurance policy that gives you money to pay for a criminal defense attorney, pay for bail, and pay for an expert witness if you need the expert witness during the trial. we can't do all of that, but what you're doing is you're prepaying our legal fees for our law firm. We can't help you with bail. I mean, we will help you with bail, but we can't pay your bail for you because we're not an insurance company. We can't get you an expert witness, although we can help you find one. We can't pay for it. But the big part of any expense with any kind of self-defense incident, especially a shooting, is the criminal defense representation, which could run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. In our case, you can start with plans that give you up to $250,000 of criminal defense representation, up to unlimited criminal defense representation if you're involved in a self-defense incident. And we will represent you. But not only that, there's a major advantage here, right? If you had one of those insurance companies, you're calling a hotline and they're going to get some money out to you and maybe recommend attorneys for you. But if you think about a situation where a person calls 911 because someone tried to break into their home at 3 o'clock in the morning and the person is now lying, shot in their living room, and they were a member of New York TAC Defense, then we are already your attorneys, right? The police are on their way. You call us. And ultimately, our representation is going to begin right then and there. First of all, the police are not allowed to question you until we arrive because you're already represented by an attorney. You've already retained an attorney. And so it's very nice to have an attorney on retainer, ready to go. Our phones are answered 24 hours a day, and we can literally get an attorney out to you to represent you even during the investigative stage of this incident.
That was my
which is often the most critical.
That was my question, is like, what happens if this is off business hours? You can still get a hold of your firm.
Our phone, listen, we're a criminal defense firm. Even before New York TAC Defense, our phones were answered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yep.
That means if you need an attorney in an emergency, you can get an attorney on the phone.
Yep. Yep. So I'm glad to hear that people are using this, because we didn't have anything. I know a while back I was looking into it myself for insurance, and there were 2 states that you couldn't get it. You just couldn't get, and New York State was one of them. I forget what the other, maybe Hawaii or something. I don't know. I forget what the other state was.
I think it's Washington State.
Washington State. Okay. So this is a great thing. It's at least some kind of coverage until we can get some of these. Well, what can we do? I mean, what can happen to get this turned around where we can actually get, not that we wouldn't want to use your firm, because I think what you're doing is fantastic, but what is it that caused that we can't get insurance in New York?
Right. So, I say this on every show. Vote. The bottom line of it is that until we start winning elections, and when I say we, I mean gun owners, until New York gun owners start winning elections, what we're going to be condemned to do is lose our rights and then have to fight for years to win those rights back in the court.
Yeah.
So if you're tired of that cycle, and I'm way tired of that cycle, then what we need to do is organize and vote. And this election cycle coming up, and here we are 6 weeks away, is a very, very important election cycle. We need to make sure we are registered to vote and we get out to vote, and we get everyone we know out to vote. Yeah.
Well, it took the Bruin case 5 years, I think, to run its way through the court system. That started in 2015, if I remember correctly. It takes a long time to get your rights back once they take them. Petertilem, thank you very much. Please tell us where we can find you. And if you're a New York gun owner, I urge you to get on this plan with Peter. Peter, tell us where they can find you and where they can get on New York TAC Defense.
Okay, so first of all, it is TILEM & Associates is the name of the law firm. It's www.tilemlawfirm.com. That's TILEM. But our New York TAC Defense site is www.newyorktacdefense.com. It's nytacdefense.com. And my phone number is there, my email is there. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks so much, Peter. It's been great having you on the show, and I really appreciate all the information. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Great to be here. I really appreciate everything you do for the Second Amendment.
Thank you. And thank you for watching the show on all our networks. And if you want to catch the podcast, we're on just about every podcast platform out there. My name is Dan Was, And remember, the Second Amendment is not a privilege, it's your right.